little weird tangent here for all the conspiracy theorists out there. Guess what day the Electoral College is making their vote? The fifth day of Hanukkah this year.
Hey friends, and welcome back to another episode of Called and Unqualified, a Create Worship Inspired video series. My name is Brenna, and I'm unqualified to be any sort of spiritual expert of any kind. And today we have a very special guest. We have Cody. And Cody, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. So my name is Cody. I also go by the Hebrew name of Yitzhak or Isaac, which means laughter. So hopefully there'll be some element of my Hebrew name in this podcast. I live in wonderful, heavily taxed Southern California with a wonderful dictator of a governor who should be in North Korea right now. And other than that, doing pretty good. Glad to be on here. Wonderful time. Thank you for having me.
Of course. And so, do you want to explain a little bit about your spiritual background and your attire for today?
Sure. So yeah, this is my normal attire that I wear on a daily. This is what I wear to the beach. But no, kidding. This is my special attire for this time of the year, ladies and gentlemen. This is the year or the season of the year for Hanukkah for the Jewish people to celebrate Hanukkah, which for the United States starts on December 10th. So pretty quick here. And when it comes to my faith background, so actually, very quickly, I was raised in a Wesleyan denomination of Christianity. Wesleyan denomination was mostly founded on the principles of abolition in the United States. It was a heavily anti-slavery religion and church. It was involved with the Underground Railroad, with the same principles taught by John Wesley. And so that's what I was raised in from my dad's side. Went to a very amazing church, even to this day, known as Skyline Church, with the head pastor of, well, actually now it's Jeremy, but the previous pastor, the one I grew up with, was Jim Garlow, Dr. Jim Garlow, very controversial in California, especially in Southern California. Many years ago, there was a thing called Proposition 8, as probably many people remember, the big Prop 8 debates of homosexual marriage and unions and so on. So he's pretty much a big face of that controversy. And sadly, if I can ask for people to daven or to pray for him, he's currently battling coronavirus right now, and he is hospitalized, not doing good. He is deteriorating very rapidly. So if people can pray for him and daven for Dr. Jim Carlo. So that's the church that I was raised in. As I grew up, though, I kind of lost my faith. I didn't really see evidence to support the biblical worldview and the beliefs, and I thought, it's just not really for me. And then I kind of revisited it during high school. That was the years that I also found out I was Jewish by DNA. I found out I was halachically Jewish through my mother. She didn't even know she was Jewish either, so that was a surprise for both of us. So we kind of figured out our background, our ancestry, and that was such an amazing experience. I've always had a pull towards the Jewish people in Israel. I didn't know why. Now I know, and it's half my DNA, half of who I am. And so I kind of found a new meaning behind my original faith when I grew up in the Christian denomination or Christian world, and that is the Jewishness of what Christianity originally was about. But then as I studied more the Torah, and I studied other Jewish writings like the Mishnah and the Talmud and the Gemara and other writings as well. Besides that, even Josephus Flavius, a famous Jewish historian, I realized that Christianity today is nowhere near the original belief system of what the original Talmudim or disciples actually believed. So I think that there's a major schism, a major schism, major divide between the Jews and the Gentile church, and so I kind of realized that, and I wanted to figure out what is the closest representation of the original faith. The original faith, according to academic scholar research, is kind of more geared known as Nazarene Judaism or Nazarite Judaism, nicknamed today as Messianic Judaism. And so that's kind of what I follow now. I'm halakhically Jewish through my mother. I find so much depth and meaning behind following traditions and following my ancestors' footsteps, and also learning what it means to be Jewish and a part of Israel, and I reach out to other people that have the same background as me. I went on my birthright trip to Israel, and it's just been an amazing experience every single day, learning more and more Torah and the Tanakh, the Hebrew scriptures is just so rewarding. Something that many churches don't actually teach on. They don't really teach the Tanakh. They don't teach the old the Hebrew scriptures or quote unquote Old Testament. So that's a little bit about me.
Yeah, and like you were saying too, even for Gentile Christians, like, because when you accept Jesus, you become a part of the spiritual family. And there's
Mhm.
just so much history in studying just Jewish culture, or even like just the way that the whole Bible was written. You learn so much about
Mm.
who Jesus was and ultimately like who God is.
Right. Yeah. And it's amazing that, even if you go to places like in Turkey, there's archaeological evidence to show that originally the church was a single unit. They actually met in synagogues, and the Gentiles and the Jews both learned together. They learned together en masse. But because of various things that happened in the history, one of which was the Romans doing what is called the Fiscus Judaicus tax, or the tax on the Jew. Basically, they said, okay, well, how do we know who's a Jew and how do we tax them? Well, if they're doing Jewish things, let's tax them. So that's how we know they're a Jew. Well, what's one of the best ways to figure out where a Jew is? Go to the synagogues. And where were the Gentiles in the first church? At the synagogues. So when they heard that they were going to get taxed, they basically said, "No, we're not Jews. We're Gentiles. We were just in the area. We're not Jews." And so there was this beginning of that division, saying, "Well, we're not Jews. We're not Jews." And then Rome and other places, they decided, okay, well, we're going to go ahead and kill the Jewish people. We're going to raid Jerusalem. We're going to kill the Jewish people. So the Gentiles again said, "Well, no, no, oh, you're here to kill the Jews. Oh, well, we're not Jews. We're not Jews. We are Gentiles. We're like you. We're nothing like that." And that's perhaps the reason why the original church fathers around the 300 AD area, they started to become vehemently anti-Semitic in their writings. Vehemently anti-Semitic. Maybe it's not because they were actually anti-Semitic, but because the culture at the time, they needed to be anti-Semitic in order to survive. So that's a possibility. It's something to kind of think about. But because of this, there has been a major divide. There has been a major divide, and along with that too, the Jews are not very innocent either. There were a group of Jews who would actually tattle on the Christians and say that they are actually Gentiles. They are actually Gentiles, and they were attacked by other forces. Even Rome at one point. Rome was killing people that claimed to be Christians, and most of them were, not most, but a good chunk of them were Gentile. And so the Jews would basically say no, or some of them. There was a small group of Jews that would say, "Oh, those are Gentiles. Get them. That's them." And the Gentiles did the same thing. "Oh, we're not Jews. Get them. They're Jews. We're not. We're Gentiles." So there's this clash that I think after 2,000 plus years we had yet to heal from those clashes. And because Gentiles were no longer studying in the synagogues like we were supposed to, or like Gentiles were supposed to, they have all they had was what they remember that they did learn, and their own Greek Gnostic Roman mindset. their pagan, their original pagan background. And so they had to mix this to kind of figure out, okay, well, where do we go from here? And so now we see this transition to what we would today call modern Christianity, which has a lot of Gnostic principles to it, a lot of practices that are not Jewish in any way. You know, Christians, for the most part, do not celebrate the biblical feasts that are the Moedim. They practice celebrations that are historically and evidentially proven to be on very famous pagan holiday days and dates. So again, it's using their original idea of what they believed in, first of all, before they turn into a messianic leader. They kind of mix them together. And the Jews, many of them, of course, are not going to be very excited to learn about Yeshua or Jesus. In Israel, it's extremely difficult. If you're a believer in Jesus and you want to make aliyah or immigration to Israel, you're more than likely going to be kicked out. You're not going to be allowed because you're a believer in Yeshua. And so there's this schism, this divide between the two. And I think that we are able to come back together. And I think through Mashiach, through the Messiah, we are able to come back together, because that was the original plan. The original plan. Actually, I have something too. A lot of people believe that the original symbol of the church of Yeshua, of Jesus, was a cross, but that wasn't actually the original symbol. According to archaeology, there was actually a symbol that predates all other symbols, and it is this. It is known as the Messianic Seal. So this, of course, is the menorah, and of course, there's the Pisces. And in the middle, you'll see the tail of the Pisces and the base of the menorah match together to make Israel, or the Star of David. So what does this mean? Why was this on the original church? This symbol is literally the very message of the gospel, of the Besorah. It says that under the Mashiach, the nations of the world will understand who Adonai is through Mashiach. And that's exactly what the symbol represents. It is Israel, or the Jew and the Gentile together under one faith is Israel, the center. And so that's the importance of this. And little things like that, where we're using only the cross, it automatically gets rid of the Jews. It automatically pushes them away, because that's a symbol of evil and murder, and it's such a negative symbol in Judaism. It's the crucifixion of our people. And so I personally don't like this item does have a cross in it, but that's because it was a gift and I probably wouldn't have purchased it myself. But it is a very, very strong message of what the original method and message of the teaching was, which is that we're supposed to be together, Jew and Gentile, in one faith. And sadly, so many people are one or the other. They're not together. That's a longer than I anticipated answer to that question. So.
No, I think that that's really helpful, just kind of explaining some of the history, because if we forget where we came from, it helps. It has a harder time like understanding the context of where we are now, like how we got here. And something that I was wondering if you could elaborate on a little bit more, just for people who aren't familiar with the term. When you say Gnosticism, how would you describe that? Because I feel like a lot of us are familiar with it, but we just don't know it by name.
Right. Well, for when I say it to you, what do you think of Gnosticism?
Just from my religious studies background, when I hear Gnosticism, it just means like a lot of like hidden knowledge, like something that almost needs to be revealed spiritually in kind of strange ways almost.
Yeah, so that's basically what it means. It's exactly that. It is in Judaism they have a similar thing, which is Kabbalah, and so it's it's so amazing to see how much Greek and Roman thought has seeped into both Judaism and Christianity. It permeates throughout it. And so yeah, Gnosticism basically is this idea that there is a like there's hidden secrets within things that need to be revealed to you through divination almost, and special revelation, which is a biblical concept, but not divination. Divination is, as Deuteronomy says, is an abomination to the Lord. And so I feel that in some cases, on both ends of the spectrum, Judaism and Christianity are practicing a some Gnostic traits um, when it comes to not necessarily divination, but pretty darn close to it. What I also mean by it too is not necessarily just the actual definition of Gnosticism. It's just going back to the reference of the Greek and Roman mindset, where we are so and I'm a person that's cursed on this too, is this Hellenistic mindset of this, or rather Herodian mindset of having material things and finding beauty in having a piece of art hanging on your wall. I mean, that was like your stereotypical Hellenist, the Herodian during that time, and we tend to focus so much on physical things and not realize what is really truly most important in our life. And not only that, but it also, when I use the word Gnosticism, I also am trying to also refer back to, again, as I said, this previous mindset that Gentiles had, which is Gentiles during that time, they obviously didn't know anything about Torah. They had nothing. They had no knowledge of Tanakh, and so they were basing their lifestyle on Greek mythology, Roman mythology, whatever mythology was at the time, and all these rituals and rites and passages and so on and so forth. And so, so many of these elements have woven itself into these beliefs, and so we still see it to this day. And you know, it also affects our way of studying the Torah and the Tanakh. Gentiles, we both have the same Hebrew scriptures, but we see it differently, and that's, again, it goes back to this preconceived mindset of how you are raised. Are you raised in a Jewish context? Are you raised in a Gentile context? And so there's that different frame of mind, that different way of thinking that affects the entire theology.
So, going back to that Jewish context, you were saying that there is a really special season coming up that, especially in Christian communities, we don't talk about very often. And
Yeah.
so I was wondering, and we're going to talk about Hanukkah. And so I was wondering, and of course, I'm pronouncing it like an English speaker. And so you, Cody, that know Hebrew, probably have just a lot more knowledge about. I feel like I approach Hanukkah from a very academic perspective. And this is my family's first season of actually celebrating Hanukkah.
Okay.
And so I was wondering if you could first start talking about the historical origin of the celebration.
Right. So basically, the story kind of goes back to 165 BC. So we know that the Greeks, pretty much, they were known as the Seleucids during that time, Syrian Seleucids. They basically took over the Jewish land. They took over Israel. They took over the temple. And not only that, but things got really bad for the Jewish people when Antiochus, or Antiochus, whichever way you want to pronounce his name, when he was the ruler over that land. And which was funny because his father, if I remember correctly, his father actually gave, who was also known as Antiochus, his father actually gave rights to the Jewish people to practice whatever they want to practice and do it freely. But then his son came along, also known as Antiochus, And he reversed it. He said, no, Jews actually don't get these rights. They shouldn't be given all these things. And not only that, but it got so bad to the point where they were literally sacrificing pigs on the altar in the temple, in the Beit Hamikdash, and that's automatically a huge slap in the face to Judaism, as we know, according to kashrut, according to kosher laws. You're not supposed to eat pigs. You're not supposed to eat any animal that does not have a cloven hoof and chews its cud both at the same time. And so pigs are representatives of this Gentile nation, this pagan nation. And so to sacrifice such an unclean animal on the altar, not only that, but the high up elders in the Jewish community were forced to eat pig flesh as well. After they burned it and cooked it and whatever, they were literally forced to eat pig flesh or die. And most chose death, but others did not. So long story short, there was a group of Jews known as the Maccabees. The Maccabean Revolt is where we get this term. So there's a group of people known as the Maccabees, mainly held by Judah Maccabee. And so they said, you know what, screw the Greek takeover of this temple. We don't want to eat this bacon. Okay, we don't want to eat pork. We don't listen. This ain't for us. All right, this ain't for us. Well, turkey bacon, fine, but pork bacon, this is absolutely terrible. There's actually a debate on turkey bacon. We're not going to get into that, but we're not going to deal with this anymore. And so they formulated a militia, basically of farmers, Jewish farmers, and these five boys, these five men, the Maccabees, it literally led the Jewish people to a victorious battle against the Greeks, and they basically kicked them out of the land, and and all that they had left was the temple. And so the temple is ransacked. I mean, there's just things are broken. There's pig flesh still everywhere, so they have to clean the entire thing. They got to rededicate, which in the Hebrew comes from the root word Hanukkah. That's where Hanukkah comes from. It is the root Hebrew word for dedication or rededication. And isn't it interesting, by the way? I just want to make a tangent. Isn't that a doctrine in Christianity to rededicate your life to Yeshua? You are Hanukkah. You are expressing Hanukkah to Yeshua. Isn't that interesting? Anyway, and so you're dedicating the temple to Adonai. And the one thing that you need is, of course, the menorah. And the menorah, of course, has 3 and 3 on the side with a shamash, which is a liter candle. And the liter candle, you light the liter candle, and from the liter candle, you light the other candles. So that's how you do it. You're not supposed to have the match and then light each one individually with the match. You light the liter candle, the shamash, you use the shamash, and you lead the rest of the candles. That's how you do it. You lead the candles with the candle. Now, what you're going to notice is the menorah that God instructed in the Torah has 7 branches. However, in Hanukkah, we have slightly more. We have 9 branches. This is not a menorah. A lot of people will say, we got to light the menorah. We got to light the menorah for Hanukkah. You're not lighting a menorah. This is not a menorah. We just use that word because the Gentiles understand it better. And the Jews, we're just lazy. We don't want to say the actual word for this. The actual word for this is called a Hanukkah, but it's not, which sounds like a terrible car, but it's not, it is not a menorah. It is a Hanukkah. And the reason why we call it the Hanukkah, and the reason why we do this is for 2 reasons. One, it's to help us physically remember the actual victory of Hanukkah, but it is actually because it is against halakha, against Jewish law, to light the menorah outside of the temple. You're not allowed to light the normal menorah. And so many groups of Messianic Christians and Messianic Jews they light the menorah in their synagogues, they light the menorah at their homes. It's like, no, you're not supposed to do that. It's only for the temple. It's only for the temple. Anyway, that's a debate for another day. So long story short, what is the miracle? What is the Nes Gadol, the big miracle? Nes is miracle in Hebrew. Gadol is big. So what is the Nes Gadol? Well, the Nes Gadol is the fact that we were looking at the menorah, and all that was left was just one little bottle or one little batch, one little thing of oil. That thing is not going to last more than a couple days. Okay, we got a problem because there's a person in Jewish communities. There's different names for the person that made the oil. The most famous one is Hannah, the oil maker. And so it took a few days to make the oil from olives, and then not only that, it took a few days for her to actually hike it over to the temple. So it's going to take about a week or so in order to get this, and she's not allowed to work on Shabbat. So we also have to deal with that thing. And so what happened is we lit the menorah and we just davened. We just prayed. And story goes that this is Jewish tradition. This is not necessarily recorded in any of the apocryphal books, but there was a person, we would call him a mensch, or a good person, basically sat in the temple the entire time davening, just constantly praying, constantly praying, constantly praying, constantly praying, and hoping that this thing will stay lit miraculously. Now, in Judaism, Jews don't believe something is a miracle until it is unexplainable. Okay. Now we can see something simple and we're like, it could have kept going. It could have kept going. And so that's why, when you light the first candle, or technically here for you guys, it's left to right. But when you light the first candle, it's a candle. It doesn't really mean anything. The second candle, second day, it could, there could be embers. There could be embers. It could have stayed that way. That's fine. Third day, I'm not impressed. I'm really not impressed. Third day, so who cares? Third day, it doesn't matter. Fourth day, okay. Fourth day, or rather, I'm using the regular menorah. But anyway, fourth day. I like the other one better because it's gold. But anyway, fourth day. Okay, fine. That's a little weird. That's a little weird. I will admit, it's a little weird. Not going to happen. I'm still not impressed. But in Judaism, the fifth day is actually the day that made all Jews realize this is from God. This is a miracle from God. So it is widely accepted in most Jewish circles and communities that the fifth day of Hanukkah is a very spiritual day, because that was the day that we realized this is not physical. This is supernatural. This is a miracle. Little weird tangent here for all the conspiracy theorists out there. Guess what day the Electoral College is making their vote? The fifth day of Hanukkah this year. Interesting. Anyway, so let's hope for a miracle. Let's hope for a miracle. Oh, and by the way, the story that is very, very old of the fifth day of Hanukkah, is a day that is when the menorah is no longer half lit. It is now one above. So this is known as the day where light beats darkness in Judaism. That's actually the traditionally held thing that's been held for years. And so the fifth night is the night where light defeats darkness. So again, for all the conspiracy theorists out there, the Electoral College is voting officially on the fifth night of Hanukkah, the night when light beats darkness. We'll see what happens. But anyway, so that's basically the story. And we got enough after the eighth day. We realized this is just not going to happen anymore. And miraculously, the oil maker came, and we now had enough oil to keep the menorah lit, and we rededicated the temple, went back to practices, and now we keep the 8 days. Now there are one last thing I will mention. There are debates of why we keep 8 days instead of just 1 day. Why don't we just say, well, we can just, like, for example, we have Holocaust Remembrance Day, which is not a biblical holiday, but it's a generally accepted day of acknowledgement. We don't keep the day of Holocaust Remembrance Day for the entirety of the Holocaust that it lasted. We only keep it for one day. So why keep Hanukkah for 8 days when we could easily just remember it in one? There's debates on that one. One of the most popular debates is the fact that Jews at the time, because they were exiled, they were incapable of truly keeping another holiday known as Sukkot. And Sukkot is a 7 to 8 day celebration. And so because of that, they decided to make Hanukkah a 7 or 8 day celebration, which is now 8 days, because it is a connection to Sukkot. It is a connection to Sukkot, and that's a widely accepted belief in Judaism. Is that Hanukkah, why we celebrate it in 8 days, is connected to Sukkot. Here's something that's interesting from a Messianic perspective. There is debate, of course, of when Yeshua or Jesus was born. Now, there's also a debate of when he was actually conceived. Now, according to the scriptures, it says that when he was born, he came to tabernacle with us, right? He came to tabernacle with us. Well, what is the Hebrew word for tabernacle? Or what is its root term? It comes from a root word of booth. And so he came to be in a booth with us. What is the booth? It is a sukkah. He came to sukkah with us. So when he was physically born, it is highly, highly possible that he was actually born on the holiday of Sukkot, which makes sense because he was not born in a barn. He was born in a booth. He was born in a sukkah, an outdoor sukkah. There was no room in the house. There was no room in the inn, quote unquote, but there was a structure of some sort in the backyard or front yard that would have been a sukkah during Sukkot, which makes perfect sense for that time of the year with sheep and flocks and why they would be around. So if we do that, if we calculate the conception of Yeshua when he was actually conceived through the Ruach HaKodesh, the Holy Spirit, using the Hebrew calendar, we can easily make the argument that he was conceived on Hanukkah, which is interesting because Hanukkah, again, is about this rededication of the temple. So he was conceived to rededicate the world to Adonai. He is the light of the world. Hanukkah is all about light. It is the dedication of lights. It is the festival of light. And Jews hold that there is a relation between Hanukkah and Sukkot. And so it's amazing how the two can be connected. Yeshua was conceived on Hanukkah, and he was born on Sukkot. And there is that beautiful connection there. He is the light that came to tabernacle with us.
And I think that that's interesting that you connected it to Jesus, because if I remember correctly, Hanukkah is also a celebration of independence, because there was a short time when it was the Judea, right? The tribe of Judah that was independent through the Maccabean Revolt. And so it's almost like they were set free from pretty much not exactly slavery, but just oppression. And so and like the Messiah like sets us free from our oppression. And so it's interesting that there's just so many connections.
Yeah, it's beautiful no matter which way you look at it. Whether if you're a Jew that only practices Judaism, it's beautiful. If you're a Messianic Jew, a Nazarene Jew, a Christian that believes in the Jewish roots of the faith, it's beautiful as well. And I would make the argument that it's even more beautiful when you include Mashiach, when you include the Messiah in there as well. But yeah, it's a connection that you will never really see unless you actually celebrate the holiday.
And so how do you celebrate it? Like modern times, both
oh boy.
like you were saying there in your last episode that you were in, you were saying that there's almost a difference between like Eastern Judaism and kind of Western practices. So what would you say are any of the ways to celebrate Hanukkah and how
Yeah,
you
there's
personally celebrate?
sure. So, man, this I will try my best to make this concise because there are so many things that I can talk about when it comes to how one practices Hanukkah. First and foremost, what I need to mention though is Hanukkah is not a Moedim. It is not an appointed time. It is not a holiday that God actually commanded us to celebrate, which leads me to a tangent, and that is the tangent of the fact that there is a thing called bracha, or blessings, that we say upon the candles, and we got to be careful because if you say the bracha according to tradition, you are actually committing a sin by adding to the Torah. And what I mean by that is a part of it says that the Hanukkah candles are a commandment that God commands us to light the menorah of Hanukkah. And that is not a commandment. It's the same with Shabbat candles. We make the bracha that that it's a commandment for us to light Shabbat candles. It is not a commandment for us to light Shabbat candles. So when you come up with a bracha, or when if you want to do some research on what bracha, what blessing you can say upon the candles, find one that makes sense. There are many of them out there that do not include mitzvot involved. There's no commandment. There's no mitzvot to lighting these candles. So I strongly urge people to not call it a commandment because now you're committing the sin of adding to the Torah. So that's number one. It's not a moedim. It's not an appointed time. But at the same time, it does not say anywhere in Scripture necessarily, at least directly, that we're not allowed to acknowledge these celebrations. It says that, of course, we're not supposed to be like the world, and we're supposed to be, and there are some passages that talk about, not to cut down a tree, bring it into your home and decorate it with silver and gold. Doesn't that sound like a very interesting holiday? But there is passages that talk about that. You're not supposed to do that. But when it comes to, and I'm going to be causing all kinds of controversy on this podcast, but but at the same time, there's no condemnation towards those who do celebrate or acknowledge Hanukkah. We all know the story of Yeshua, and I believe it was the book of John, chapter 10, where he actually went to the temple during the Feast of Dedication, which we all know is the Feast of Hanukkah. That's what dedication is. But it doesn't say that he celebrated it, but it doesn't also say that he condemned it. He went to the temple during Hanukkah. And so, to me, that seems to be one of those things where God is allowing you to use this information for however way you want to interpret it in your own life, as long as you're following the biblical standards. So, since we know it's not a moedim, it's not an appointed time, we should never elevate it to an appointed time. We should never elevate it to Sukkot. We should never elevate it to Rosh Hashanah, the New Year. We should never elevate it to Yom Kippur, the Day of Atonement. We should never elevate it to a biblical moedim. It is just an acknowledgement of a historical event. So it's down here versus the actual biblical feasts and fasts. So that's number one. So we have to keep our mindset of saying, okay, this is not a commandment. I'm just acknowledging something that is very important. So if you go with that mindset, you're not breaking any commandment. You're not breaking any sin. You're not breaking any Torah. And you're actually doing something that Yeshua probably did. He probably did go and celebrate Sukkot, Hanukkah rather. He probably did go and maybe experience the lighting of the candles of the Hanukkah, or maybe, I don't, whatever the practices were during Second Temple Judaism for Hanukkah. He probably did it. We don't know. There's no scriptural evidence either way. So it's purely up to us to figure that one out. I believe it's very beautiful to hold on to Hanukkah as a traditional celebrated time. I do believe that there's a lot of messianic connections with that as well. And so I think that it's an important thing. Now, how do you celebrate it? There's There's a general consensus. We know it's 8 days. So that's a foundation. We all know it's 8 days. So celebrate it 8 days. We all know the very foundation. You're supposed to have a Hanukkah or something like it, where you can have the candles being lit. You always light it from left to right. If you are putting it in the window, it is actually a mitzvah. It is in traditional Judaism, it's a mitzvah. It is a good thing, a commandment. Again, not a commandment, but it's a good thing to let the people outside the window see it the way it's supposed to be seen. So even though to you it looks like you're lighting it from right to left, in the window to someone looking in the opposite direction, it is actually left to right. So if you're putting it in the window, which you're supposed to do traditionally, because you're supposed to show the pride of the miracle, you're supposed to show that we won. Basically, it's a flag of victory, and it's a flag of freedom, that we're not afraid to be who we are. We're not ashamed to be followers of the God of Israel. And there's actually so many pictures out there. I definitely recommend looking them up, of people during World War II putting Hanukkahs on the windowsill, and you can see a Nazi flag in the background. I mean, they legitimately were not ashamed. They were not afraid to show that they were Jews. And it's a powerful symbol to put it in the window. I have so many different menorahs. Some of them are LED. Some of them are actually wooden, where you kind of just put like the wooden candles in the Hanukkah. Others are actually ones that you have candles. I have one that is oil based. So I have a lot of them. They're all over the place. The cats love them. And the cats love to climb all over them, knock them over and stuff. So it's going to be interesting when I light them up. But they're going to have to be in the other room. So that's a foundation. So again, it's 8 nights. We have the Hanukkah. We light the Hanukkah candles. The Hanukkah, the menorah is supposed to be in the window. You're supposed to light the candles left to right. If you're not going to put it in the window, if you're going to put it in the window, make sure that the candles are facing or are seen from outside as being left to right. And then it goes down into the more interesting debate. Do we have colorful decorations? Do we have suits like this? Do we have lights outside? Do we have tinsel decorations? Things that look oddly similar to Christmas. Because there are actually Jews and Messianic Jews who they don't want their children to miss out on their the people. Everyone's celebrating these Christmas traditions, and they might miss Christmas because they're now practicing more Torah observance, and they want to be kind of away from the world. So me personally, I don't find it to be a bad thing to have lights, as long as there's a difference behind it, because a lot of people that celebrate Christmas go over and above in Christmas lights. I'm very simple, just a simple light up sign on my balcony that says Hanukkah, Happy Hanukkah, with some white lights underneath it. It's blue and white, which is the colors of Israel. So I just do simple lights, simple stuff, just to tell people, hey, it's Hanukkah. I have, I don't really do anything beyond that except for the menorah itself and lighting it. So there's that. I do light it. There's songs. There's a few songs here and there. The Maccabees is a great group of people, a cappella group that sings an amazing array of Hanukkah songs. And they even give you a song that's based on a latke recipe, which is a potato pancake. Most people in the Gentile world will probably call it a hash brown, but it's a latke. And so that's we eat fried foods. What better way to celebrate a miracle of oil than to use oil to fry your foods? Fried chicken, fried potato pancakes, fried jelly donuts known as sufganiyot. I mean, we got everything is fried. It is a heart attack holiday. Okay, it is literally a holiday meant to raise your blood pressure and put you in a diabetic coma. It is just this amazing holiday. Where we also spin dreidels, which is a wooden or clay spinning top that have different letters on it, different things, Aleph, Dalet, Gimel, so on and so forth. And whatever comes up, you get Gelt, which is coins. It's like little chocolate coins. Kids play the game. There's debates of when the dreidel game was invented. Some say it dates all the way back to when the guy was watching the menorah being lit in the temple in 165 BC, and that there were kids gathering, and he had to figure out a way to get them interested in what was going on. So he created this game. Again, traditions, it may or may not be true. I like to play dreidel. I think it's a really fun game. It's a fun tradition. I eat latkes. Then there's the debate. What do you put on the latke? Do you put applesauce? Do you put sour cream? Do you put anything else? I say it doesn't matter. I personally think it's more superior to put applesauce, but again, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. I like the sweet and savoriness of applesauce, especially cinnamon applesauce on top of a latke. Nice cold cinnamon applesauce on a freshly off the skillet or out of the frying pan, or deep fryer. I use a deep fryer because I just love oil and I'm frying everything. So deep fryer it is for me. You can get a cheap one for like $20 at Walmart. Hey, just go get it. It's good. It's gonna last you for a while. And what else is there? I mean, that's generally about it. I mean, yeah, of course you can go and there's like local synagogue services, local events. If you're more traditional and you don't want to do anything lights or dreidels or anything like that, then the most traditional thing you can do, and a lot of people do, is they just go to the synagogue on during Hanukkah, and they listen to the book of Maccabees from the Apocrypha, and they listen to the story of what happened and how it happened, and it's just a day, 8 days of remembering where we were and our victory and our freedom, and to just embrace it. So there's so many different ways you can do it.
So, would you personally have anything else that you wanted to share about Hanukkah?
Ooh, I don't know if there's anything else that I didn't really mention. I mean, there's so much. Obviously, there's like so much about Hanukkah that people could talk about, but um, I don't think I have anything on the top of my head that I didn't really mention, or at least briefly mention. But again, I just want to reiterate, it is not a Moedim, it is not an appointed time. So, if people are interested in acknowledging this special time and celebrating it with the rest of the Jewish people around the world, don't feel obligated to do it perfectly, because there is no such thing as doing a unappointed holiday perfectly. There are ways to make other, holidays to do it properly. Sukkot, there's proper ways to do it. There's Rosh Hashanah, there's proper ways to blow the shofar horn. There is, Yom Kippur, you have to fast for the full day, and so on. You have to do special prayers and davening and so on and so forth. There are certain things that you do for these other holidays, but there is no commandment to celebrate Hanukkah. It is a historical holiday. It is in the Apocrypha. It is actually mentioned as a holiday in the book of Maccabees. Whether you want to believe that the Apocrypha books are inspired in some way or not, that's another debate that we can get into. But I do believe that it is still Jewish history, and we should acknowledge its importance, at least, acknowledge its importance and its potential messianic message behind it too. It's very beautiful for Christians, even for Gentile families. I honestly think, again, I'm going to ruffle some feathers here, but I honestly think it's a much more beautiful and biblical holiday than Christmas.
Well, yeah, I mean, you get to celebrate for 8 nights.
Yeah,
who's
who
gonna
doesn't like giving
complain?
gifts? Oh, that's another one I forgot, is giving gifts. Again, it's very, very Christmassy. I personally like giving gifts anyway. I mean, Jews are known supposed to be tzedakah people. Tzedakah is charity. And so, we're constantly giving tzedakah. I think Jewish people, feel free to fact check me. I think Jewish people are historically, statistically, the most charitable people in the entire world. But it's one of those things where again, I don't see it. You can see it as a connection to Christmas. Fine, that's one way to look at it, or you can look at it as another way of giving charity. Some Jewish families actually have a different view of giving gifts. Actually, this is a very major view of it. Little tiny kids, they'll get regular toys. That's fine. But generally speaking, Hanukkah gifts are not supposed to be things of this big materialistic worldview. It is actually supposed to be things that you need, or things that really are important. So clothes are very important if you need it, if you absolutely need it. Not these big name brand clothes, which is fine. You can give those gifts, but it's not what the holiday is supposed to be. It's about giving what you absolutely need, not what you absolutely want. Giving food is another way. Giving a gift card to get food. If you know that a family or loved one is struggling with groceries, give them some money so they can buy some groceries. Give them a gift card to buy some groceries. That's a good gift to give on Hanukkah. If someone is struggling with a car payment and you have the extra funds to help out, use that money during this time to help them out. You don't have to do the whole payment, but do what you can. It's about giving charity, giving what people need. And it doesn't necessarily always have to be monetary. If you have something that you don't need, but someone else in your family or friend list that does need it, even if they don't celebrate Hanukkah, give it as a Hanukkah gift. Give it to them as a gift. Give it as tzedakah. And so that's, again, it's about building each other up. It's about celebrating the fact that we're free, that we can do these things, and that God has blessed you with so many blessings of abundance, that you have so many blessings you don't know what to do with it. Well, here's something you can do with those blessings. But again, it's not at a appointed time. It's not a moedim. Don't feel obligated to do it in some way. If you like a tradition, feel free to follow it. Just don't call it a commandment, because again, that's adding to the Torah. Don't call it a commandment. Don't call it a moedim. Make it personal. Hanukkah is a traditional holiday that has very basic foundations, but it's a very tailored holiday. It's a holiday that is tailored to your family. It's something that you can be proud of to pass on to your kids. As long as you keep to those traditional foundations of history, you can build on that.
Yeah, and just on that note, I know you were talking about some of the really heart-wrenching parts about just the history of anti-Semitism, but I feel like a lot of fear comes from misunderstanding. So, what a great way is it to build bridges by sharing such a wonderful time of generosity with our neighbors?
Absolutely, especially for people that believe in Yeshua, believe in Jesus as Mashiach. What better way to connect with the people of Israel, which we are commanded to love and pray for and be a part of? You're grafted as Gentiles, you're grafted into the olive branch, into Israel. What better way to be a part of that family than to celebrate with them? And as you celebrate with them, maybe have a conversation or two of your faith. Talk about Yeshua and so on. But remember, Jews are very much involved in the Hebrew scriptures and the Torah, so you might get a little bit of a debate going on. That's what Jews do. We debate. But it's one of those things where it's such a perfect way to connect with the Jewish people, and to connect with the 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 other half of the Messianic seal that I mentioned. Because without it, all you are is a Pisces. That's all you are. But without the Jews, you're not Israel. So Jew and Gentile together, not separated, together is Israel. And it kind of reminds me too of something that is a tangent that we can probably get into in either another podcast or even on here if you want. Is the fact that connections of two halves are always important in Judaism, and in the Torah in general. In the Torah in general, there's always that balance. There's always going to be that balance. That without that balance, there is nothing. God is a plurality. His name in Bereshit in Genesis is Elohim. It is a plural word. He has a plurality to his nature. Without that plurality, he wouldn't be Elohim. Without, if you're just a Pisces in the world, without that Jewishness, without that connection to Israel, to the Jews, you're not truly in depth, that is, in depth with the faith. Now, I'm not saying you need it. I'm not saying that you absolutely need it. You can live a righteous, obedient life to Yeshua, without this depth, but it brings beauty to it. It brings more meaning to it. It brings that connection to it. And I think that this time of the year, Hanukkah, is a great way to come together. It's not a holiday that is too different from holidays that Gentiles are celebrating right now of Christmas. It's not. It's there are some elements that are similar. So you do have these foundations that you can kind of use to build that common ground. Um, and also I want to mention too is don't be afraid to go to your synagogue, a local synagogue. If you've never been to one before, look for one that is Chabad, Chabad, Chabad. If you go on their website, chabad.org, Chabad.org, you can actually look up your nearest Chabad. They have thousands of them around the world. They actually sent, at one time when they first began, 4,000 rabbis to almost every country of the world. They've opened a Chabad everywhere. And so they are the funnest of the group. They're very fun. They're very eccentric in many ways. They love to laugh. They love to sing. They love to dance. It's a very engaging synagogue, a very engaging environment. So look up your nearest Chabad, and I bet you they're going to have a Hanukkah event in some way, shape, in some way, shape. Even here in communist California, where we have the worst lockdown right now at the moment by our dictator, we have in San Diego and in a place called La Jolla, a Chabad is actually having an event, a menorah lighting over in the mall, and they're giving free Hanukkah gifts to children that come over. It has gelt with again chocolate coins and a little tiny menorah gift and things like that, and a jelly donut, a fried jelly donut, a little bag just for free. But again, look up your nearest Chabad, look up your nearest synagogue, and see what events they have, and don't be afraid as a Gentile to go into a synagogue. They're not gonna, now if you're a man, they're probably gonna ask you to wear one of these on the top of your head if you want to go into the synagogue. Again, just go along with it and embrace it. Embrace it. Embrace the unknown. Embrace the unknown. And long story short, even if you disagree vehemently with the things that are being taught, at least you come away saying that you now know what what it's partially about. What it's partially about. At least you went and learned about.
And you just brought more people into your community.
Yeah,
it's building bridges. Even if you're not going to take that title for yourself, you are expanding your horizons and ultimately just loving more people.
Yeah, and it goes oppositely. And this message also goes to us fellow Jews, the fellow Jews here, that maybe even listening to the podcast. I hope is that share Hanukkah with your Gentile neighbors, share with them, and show them that this is an important holiday for everyone that believes in the God of Israel. And so, I mean, because without the event that created Hanukkah in the first place, where would we really be at the moment? I mean, if the events of Hanukkah did not happen, would we even have Yeshua as Mashiach when we had him? So it's very important in the timeline of the Jews and of the tribe of Judah, which was the line of where the Mashiach is going to come from. So if the tribe of Judah was completely wiped out, then we wouldn't really have anything at all. And so it's one of those things where it's very important. So again, to the Jews, don't be afraid to share it with your Gentile neighbors. Give them a Hanukkah gift, or maybe give them a greeting of a Hanukkah greeting, or welcome them to a menorah lighting and show them what it's like. And tell them the story. Tell them the story of Hanukkah and how it happened, and just share it. There's so much, as you mentioned too, and you mentioned it perfectly, is that we have a fear of ignorance. We have this fear based on ignorance, rather. And so the best way to build that bridge, as you mentioned, is to just connect with each other and learn our differences. You may disagree, but that's okay. Everyone disagrees. Everyone disagrees. And so it's good to learn, though. It's good to learn with each other. Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid to go in there. I mean, the Talmudim, the disciples went into places of pure paganism to teach them about the Bible, about the Besorah, about the gospel. In Judaism, we have literally our patriarchs and matriarchs going into situations where they're surrounded by all of these pagans. We have by all of these negative, horrific, horrible things that happen, and yet they went in and they brought the God of Israel with them. So to quote the scriptures, if God is with us, who should we fear? What should we fear? So if you're fearing, then do you really have God with you?
And if you're concerned about, if you're Jewish and you're concerned about some of your Gentile friends or community members judging you for inviting them to a really fun celebration, I let some of my friends in our young adults group at church know that we wanted to have a Hanukkah gathering. It probably won't happen because a lot of us just got sick.
Yeah.
But they got so excited, and I actually had a couple of them ask if we were going to be telling them the story of Hanukkah. And so, like, if you feel that tug on your heart to share it with people, chances are there's going to be a lot of people that are just waiting for an invite to be a part of it.
Basically, to the Jew, what better way to share the Torah with a Gentile? And for the Gentile, what better way to connect with the original faith of the followers? And not only that, but what better way to even show the possible connections with Yeshua as well? And so again, there's benefits on both sides, but even beyond theology, it's just a fun holiday of fried food. Okay, a fried food and celebrating our freedom. I mean, it's literally one of the best holidays out there.
So, did you have anything else that you wanted to add?
That's a very dangerous statement. You literally asked that like an hour ago, and I went on this whole tangent. You can't ask a Jew if they have any more to say, because you're gonna get it. You're gonna get it. So I'm just gonna hold my tongue. I'm just gonna say that I said exactly all that I need to say and want to say. And if people want to learn more, they can reach out, or they can go and learn more themselves.
Okay, well, and my voice cracked. Okay, guys, so that's it for today's episode. Thank you so much for watching. You can find all these episodes and podcast episodes on createworshipinspire.com, and you can find the link to our Patreon page. And merch is now available, so go over to createworshipinspire.com to place your order for some really awesome stuff. Please be sure to comment down below with what you're most excited for this season and any other suggestions that you have for future videos. And please be sure to like this video and share with a friend, and subscribe if you haven't already. And you can follow the Create Worship Inspire Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter pages. See you next time.